All right, we are back. There is no shortage of things to talk about. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with the one and only Mitch Salazar. And just like that, the 2025 WSL Championship Tour season comes to a close with the Lexus WSL Finals Fiji, presented by Corona Cero, wrapping up last week, and Australia's Molly Picklum and Brazil's Yago Dora both taking home their very first world titles. Excellent surfing from both of them and very well-deserved champions. We're looking forward to next season and the new tour format to celebrate 50 years of a world tour in 2026. Mitch, so much to break down from finals day, but first things first, how are you doing post-finals? Where are you at? What have you been getting up to?
Yeah, I'm doing really good, Dave, and I hope the same for yourself. But I'm actually in next right now, visiting my family for a few days, just post-finals. But, I've been scoring some fun waves down here, really excited about, the outcome of the year. And, of course, as I said, the two people that were deserving of the World Championships ended up becoming world champions for the first time. A couple historic moments. First of all, Fiji, first time ever we've crowned world champions at that location right there. Pretty awesome. It's really cool to see them really back surfing, too. I know we're there back until 2029 at the very least. Nice to see Cloudbreak and the possibility of restaurants on the Championship Tour schedule. But most importantly, to close out the finals format in such a beautiful way was something outstanding. And yeah, surf was pumping toward the tail end of the day, but it was definitely challenging towards the very beginning of it with a growing swell out there in the water.
Very well said. Now, typically you and I open up our podcast with our winners and losers segment, where we don't necessarily go off the results, but kind of those, what were the themes happening, who won, who lost, etc. Pretty obvious who won and lost coming out of Fiji. So yeah. We have an updated segment. This is called the Take Machine. You and I are going to give one take for each of the matches. So I'll read the match out and the scores. You give me your take, I'll give you mine, and we'll go in that fashion. So the Lexus WSL Finals presented by Corona Cero opened up with women's match 1. This was Caroline Marks ultimately defeating Betty Lou Sakura Johnson 9.66 to 5.0. Mitch, what was your take on this opening match?
Well, obviously for Sakura, it's her first time in the format, a lot of nerves right there. And especially, I think the one thing that affected her the most was the long wait. Usually getting it out of the way, first or second day of the waiting period, you're there already, you're not seeing your opponents that much. You're obviously getting used to the island, but it is your second time competing at the location. But for Caroline Marks, I mean, she's been here and done this before, back-to-back runner-up to the World Championship right now, and right before that, her maiden World Championship. So I really think that experience mattered a lot right here. But the one thing that I want to point out the most, there was a rookie mistake by Sakura in this heat where she takes a ski back out, her leash wraps around the ski, and, she loses one of her fins right there. And this is the only mistake I really saw from her. You want to be patient. You know that you want to be on the best waves to beat Caroline Marks, an experienced surfer like her. But you can't pull a rookie mistake like this in a situation, the most important situation of your career so far. And that's really, to me, what cost her the match. For Caroline, I thought she surfed very well. She was a very smart and strategic surfer in that match, but most importantly, experience prevailed in a location like this. And of course, in a format that I think has benefited her in the past 2 days.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was one of those things too, and we talked about it previously, where the swell target was a little bit all over the map. Is it going to be huge? Is it going to be a restaurant swell? And I know we turned up on the day. We went on hold. The swell was building. It was a little slow, and I think the score lines reflected that. I was really, really impressed with Betty Lou's surfing in the training sessions, actually. She kept standing out to me. We did kind of the co-ed training sessions. We had 2 different groups, and every time I looked up at the screen, someone was belting it off the top, and it was Betty Lou, and I'm like, wow, she could be really, really dangerous. And I did think she'd be more of a threat. Obviously, the leash wrapping around the ski, suboptimal. Swell building, suboptimal. Wasn't the case for Betty Lou this year, but as you pointed out, Caroline Marks, she is just a deadly, deadly competitor in virtually all conditions, and well-deserving win. We next moved to men's match 1, and this ended up being 2019 world champion out of Brazil, Italo Ferreira, defeating Jack Robinson, winner of our previous event in Tahiti, 14.33 to Jack's 5.83. Mitch, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, we all know what Italo's capable of. He can throw big airs, big carves, combine everything. During the free surfs, too, he had a couple spectacular waves. And I just truly felt being under priority right here. This was, to me, the biggest catalyst out of, the big movement in this year's finals in comparison to the other one. Higher seed has priority at the beginning of the heat. For Italo, he surfs his heat strategically, very different to when he opens up in open priority in comparison to when he's in second priority.
Mm.
To me, it benefited him. It added too much pressure to Jack, or at least that's what I noticed. And, unfortunately for Jack right there, he wasn't needing major scores, but at a point of the heat, needing two scores with that small amount of time left and the growing swell, you got to be expecting a certain wave out there. He was needing 2 sevens basically at the end of the heat, where Ichila was able to go on smaller waves, create a lot of these scoring opportunities for himself, surf an excellent heat. And of course, for Jack Robinson, a couple of falls cost him rhythm back into getting into the ocean. And, number 5 in the world isn't bad, but I was feeling at least number 2 in the world for him, given the location that we were going at. And, now he's back to the drawing board. He has won at Bells before, and excited to see him back in 2026. But I thought Ichilo surfed a perfect heat given how the conditions were.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this match went virtually how anyone would have predicted, right? Italo got very busy early on. He caught a ton of waves. He nailed some huge airs. And unfortunately, Jack couldn't produce over a 4. Jack's another one. He looked great in the training sessions. He was trying his sharp eyes. He was trying his Arakawas. And even though the training sessions weren't in like bombing, wild open ocean, like tubing Cloudbreak, it wasn't hugely dissimilar to what we got on finals day. And Jack still looked great. I think Italo is going to be challenging in any conditions out there. But when you think about it, between Jack's performances in the training sessions, and also I'd argue he has very similar backhand tools to Griffin Colapinto in terms of repertoire, power, and speed, and just didn't unleash that during the match. So missed opportunity for Jack. He's had a few cracks at the WSL finals format. Hasn't panned out for him, but yeah, that's the way that match went. Women's match number 2, Caroline Marks advances. She takes on the reigning women's world champion, Caitlin Simmers. Ends up beating her 14-6 to 11-3-3. What's your take on this one, Mitch?
Well, this to me, stylistically, was the most interesting matchup leading up to the finals. We all knew that Caitlin was really good at going left, a great barrel rider. She's made the final in Tahiti before. She was coming off of the final over there against Molly Picklum too, but I just think this is a completely different wave to where she had competed at in previous events with this format before. She even came out publicly and said, I don't think having it at Cloudbreak is something that is really, beneficial to me, to my own style. I want to have it at lowers personally. I totally understand that, but, given the conditions and how it was, I was thinking to myself, all you need really is 2 turns to be able to get a 7 or 8 with your capabilities. And to Caroline's credit, Caitlin was winning the majority of the heat, in the first half, and then she eventually came back and then was able to get her 7s and, something close to excellence. What I felt would happen with Caitlin, once she had her 11 points, she maybe got a little bit too comfortable on going waves that weren't going to better her scores. Opened up priority for Caroline. She won on that bomb, got the high 7, eventually took the lead. And unfortunately for Caitlin Simmers, back to the drawing board right now. Number 4 in the world isn't bad, especially after winning your first maiden title. But it was kind of the tail of the tape for her this year. Ups and downs, couple of victories, looking really good at certain locations, but not as consistent as many of us were thinking of her. But I thought Caroline Marks, once again, experience really prevailed right here, especially in winning those decisive heats. To me, she really looked spectacular in those kind of conditions. And to be completely honest, too, I think she's made major improvements to her forehand, especially on the carbs, Dave. Caroline Marks, to me, looked better than ever going left.
Yeah, I think your take is dead on. Like, stylistically, from a competitive standpoint, could not be further opposite, right? Like, Caitlin Simmers, as you pointed out, like a pretty high variant surfer this year. Like, excellent scores and event wins, or, didn't pan out for her, for someone of her talent, right? And I actually think it was during this match that the broadcast brought out one of the more interesting stats I'd heard all year, which was that Caroline Marks at that point had made it this far in the season with only one excellent scoring ride, so an 8.0 ride or better. And I actually had to ask a few people if that was right, because it kind of blew my mind. And she, as you pointed out, she is an absolute machine. She can get high 6s, high 7s on dial-up in virtually any and all conditions, and just such a gnarly competitor. She certainly has the potential to drop 8s, 9s, and 10s, but I just thought it was a really interesting stat. I mean, Katie's a world champion. I am curious to see what the bounce back or non-bounce back looks like for her in 2026. But yeah, Caroline's win all day long there. Match number 2 for the men, we saw the Californian Griffin Colapinto 16.33 heat total, defeat Idolo Ferreira with a 13.67 heat total. This was a spicy heat. Mitch, what was your take on it?
Oh, it was amazing. I thought Italo surfed a couple of waves up by far. I mean, there was 1-7 that he had where he just throws an incredible alley-oop. The way he lands, where he lands is impeccable. I mean, the guy's really surfing with a lot of speed out there. And especially for anybody that surfed a wave like Cloudbreak that moves down the line real quick, but changes quite a bit, especially with the different swell directions that we had in the water with the growing swell. Truly incredible stuff. But I thought, to me, the most overlooked surfer out of everybody that had qualified for the Lexus WSL Finals Fiji was Griffin. He was the defending champ at the regular season event right here in Fiji. He was somebody who on the back end has made major improvements. I mean, you look at lowers, you look at a lot of the beach breaks that he surfs in Southern California. They have certain similarities. So when it's junky out there at Cloudbreak, something that you need to adjust to on the fly, you need to adapt. And I felt like he truly did that. And to me, the basis of his surfing right here, that he was using the element of speed and combining with power so well. As soon as he dropped one of the eights, he broke away so much. And Ito wasn't just on the quality waves out there. And I feel like he used gravity to his benefit. There was a reason why he advanced. And I thought he was super deserving of making it through this heat right here. What a spectacular second half of the season for Griffin. Ends up being runner-up to the world title in 2025.
Yeah, he looks so solid. Just really great reads, like a great variety of turns as well. They had speed and power, but like different angles. And in a weird way, it's almost like from an approach standpoint, it's almost like a reverse Haleiwa, which is another wave that he surfs incredibly well because he's got such good fundamentals, like excellent entry speed, hard off the bottom, but has that adaptability when he approaches the lip. So, and as I said with the Jack comment, it's like Jack has similar tools. It's just amazing the divide in performance out there with someone like Griff over the last 2 seasons. Just full power and completed waves. And I wanted to get your take on this too, because from my perspective, Idolo did something really odd for me in this heat. I mean, he is a surfer with virtually all the tools himself, right? He can kind of do anything. And in this heat, he kept taking waves and he kept racing these waves looking for one big section to do a huge air, which he kind of did again and again. Yeah. The airs were amazing, but like, that is a beach break strategy. That will get you 8s, 9s, and 10s at a beach break where, the variety of turns more often than not, the opportunity for turns isn't super high, but the potential to do a gigantic air over a critical section is. Cloudbreak's a canvas that allows for huge combinations and like comprehensive lines and rides where you're linking things together. Like, this is something Idolo is more than capable of doing, but he kind of got stuck with an approach that at Cloudbreak on that day, the ceiling was beneath the excellent range, and Griffin really made him pay for it. What was your take on that, Mitch?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. There was the one air that I told you that, I mean, he clears easily 10 feet right there with that alley.
Amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah. That is a smaller wave, though, so he surfed that wave up by a long shot. But in the end, as you said, Griffin was just always on the better wave.
Yeah.
So it gets to a point where to be able to compete for a world championship, especially within a one-day format, too, you need to be able to control the amount of waves that you're catching, first of all, because stamina is a big thing. But I want to point out the 2 years that he ended up runner-up at the finals format at lowers, it was much smaller, and he was surfing that way. He was catching a lot of waves. That it was benefiting his own style. And of course, he defeated a lot of great surfers en route to those 2 runner-ups of the world titles. But the 1 year that he ended up third was when Felipe beat him in 2021, and that was when it was much bigger.
Right.
And he tried to surf the same way. It didn't work out. So I think, to your point, obviously, there's a time and a place for everything, and you just need to be able to recognize that in the moment. And there's sometimes you get a little ahead of yourself. And that's what I felt in this particular match right here against Griffin. And once again, the fact that Griff was able to get his career best result in pursuit of his first world title, I also think demonstrated a lot of what the pressure was like for him at home at lowers.
Right.
I did not feel that at all right here. I mean, he just looked loose. He looked like he was athletic, looking really fast and sharp. And as you said, his variety of maneuvers on the backhand of me was so spontaneous too. And that's something that you really need to bring out, especially coming up against the other 4 best surfers in the world in a calendar year, So I really think that was something that Griffin was out there to prove. And especially with waves like that of consequence, when it was a growing swell, he was always on the better waves in this match.
That's a great point. Women's match 3. Caroline Marks, Rampage, 13.67, defeats Gabriella
Yeah.
Bryan from Hawaii with a 9.47. What's your take on women's match 3, Mitch?
Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on Gabby right here, but I'm just going to go out and say that this is definitely the most disappointing result and performance out of everybody in the Lexus WSL Finals, Fiji. I was expecting a lot more from Gabby. I think there were a lot of kinks in her armor that showed at this event right here, and there's a lot of work to be done. And I know there's some things that happened within her camp. Brett Simpson was there helping her from the Hurley team, and unfortunately, I know that she separated from Richard Dog Marsh. That might have hurt, but in the end, the opportunities were there, especially with priority at the beginning of the heat too. I thought that was going to benefit her, but I just felt like she was searching for a wave that wasn't really existent out there at that moment, waiting for a set that never came through. Caroline got busy under priority, and then eventually she got into a better rotation, was on the much better waves, was able to get a great set, have a couple of big carves, and then Gabby just seemed like she was stuck in a rut with her wave selection too, going on way smaller waves. I think her best score was a high 4, barely breaking a 9-point heat total. So in the end, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but this one stings a lot given how good she was during the regular season. I mean, dude, 3 wins throughout the regular season. You were number 2 heading into the event, and you had the chance right here. Like, I just feel like personally for myself, if I would have been in this position, I know I probably would have at least tried to gone on some much better quality waves out there. But props to Caroline once again, man. I mean, she went out there and proved how good of a competitor she is going up against Gabby Bryan, who had won 3 regular season CT events. What's your take on it, though, Dave? Because I know Gabby yourself, she's been on the lineup a couple of times, and we do consider her an unofficial lineup team rider. I mean, once again, props to her for an amazing year, but I expected a bit more from her.
Yeah, actually, I got to catch up with Gabby's mom while I was over there for the week and told her exactly that. I'm like, she doesn't have to put a sticker on the board, but she is an unofficial lineup team rider. We love her surfing over here. But no, not dissimilar from you, man. I mean, another 6 and a 7 from Caroline and another win. And we love Gabby surfing. You pointed out 3 wins on the CT this year, arguably the most powerful surfer on tour. And I just think her backhand could have been such a point of difference weapon out at Cloudbreak. It didn't happen. And, after going down to Aaron Brooks last season and missing out on the WSL finals last year in admittedly different conditions at Cloudbreak, you have to wonder if Fiji is a little bit of an odd competitive blind spot for Gabby. And that happens, like, that's happened over the history of the sport. You think, like, this surfer and that wave, like, semifinals or bust every event. Like, it's a guarantee. And it just sometimes it doesn't click. And it'll be interesting to see, how she processes it. I think she processed missing out on the finals last year in a very productive way, just by virtue of
100%.
how successful she was this year. And yeah, I mean, moving to a version of the aggregate rankings next year and just how good of a surfer she is, she could be really deadly. But yeah, we'll see how it goes in 2026. Men's match 3 showed the other rampager of the event, Griffin Colapinto, 15.43, defeating the big brew from South Africa, Jordy Smith, 13.5. What was your take on this one, Mitch?
Man, as I told you before in our post Tahiti recap episode, there was one person that I think 95% of the world population was rooting for was for Jordy Smith, and he did have an excellent score in that heat. Props to him. That floater, I think, only a certain number of people worldwide would have gone for that maneuver right there, but he was in a desperate situation.
Sure.
I mean, he doesn't make that floater and he's not back into the heat. Breaks the combination right there. Was still needing to score towards the tail end of the heat, but once again, I just think the big difference right here was that Griffin was just surfing at a much faster speed, and most importantly, was always on waves within the priority rotation that was benefiting him too. If there's one thing that I will say, being the higher seed, priority is obviously a way bigger benefit than it could be a demerit. But in the end, too, it just adds more pressure to the person that actually has priority, because you make a mistake, it's like, what's the whole point of being the higher seed in the event? If I'm using it badly, if I'm just wasting it at the beginning of the heat. So I understand Jordy's perspective. It was a slow heat too, but once Griffin got going, he just went on a roll. And as we saw throughout the entirety of the day, he was just really in a great rhythm with the ocean too. But once again, Jordy Smith, number 3 in the world. He's been runner-up multiple times. I think another excellent year. In Fiji, though, I think most of us knew that he wasn't going to be the favorite right there, despite him being a great surfer and having competed there since the late 2000s as well. But this to me just showed why Griffin right now is considered one of the best in the world. He went up against the guy who had a career year and went out there and said, you know what, Big Brew, I don't care who you are, what you're capable of. This is my event for the taking. And I just feel like, once again, the speed on the back end, the variety of maneuvers really stood out from Griffin.
Yeah, I think you're right. Griffin looks super strong again. I do think that this heat felt very winnable for Jordy Smith. As we point out, Jordy's got priority. That could maybe be a curse, especially if you hear your competitor racking up like 6s and 7s and you're like, turn it around going like, what the hell's going on here? Like, but then you mentioned the floater, but like the turn on the section before the floater was like the biggest turn of the day, right? Where Jordy's really using that big frame. Huge big blaster to a big tail drop floater, gets the 8.67. He doesn't need much at that point. He just didn't get it, right? And that right at the end of the heat, Griffin really shut the door with a great wave. But that to me, like in the last few minutes, I'm like, Jordy, if he gets the wave, is going to win this. He got a wave. I don't know if the score was there. I definitely think he surfed a little more conservatively on that than he would have normally. And it probably wasn't going to do it anyway, but it didn't look like he was going for the score. Maybe he's trying to complete the wave and get the mid-range score. Ultimately, it didn't matter. Griffin shut the gate on him right at the end. But yeah, it was a great season from Jordy, and by all accounts, like he's nowhere near being done. Like he's here to stay, and I think the schedule next year, especially with those opening 3 events at Bells Beach, Snapper Rocks, and Margaret River, all places where he is excellent at, he could run off with a heater next year. So we'll see how it goes. Women's final match 1, right? So the change this year is if you are the number 1 seed, you only have to win that very first match to claim the world title against the challenger. You lose that match, it goes to best 2 out of 3. In the opening women's final match, Caroline Marks, the Rampager, 12.5 defeats the then current world number 1, Molly Picklum, 10.5. What was your take on this heat? Because I think this got people's hearts going a little bit.
Oh, dude, I remember calling this heat, and Molly had her 2.5s, really solid heat, smart and strategically very well surfed heat. But I was like, 10 points in the final match against the way Caroline's surfing, like to me, the most motivated Caroline's been seen throughout the year. And I was just like, I still don't know if there's a wave out there. Caroline could easily get a 7 or an 8, and case in point, she did towards the end of the heat, and then Molly was needing a score. Wave never came through, and I just felt like maybe Molly was barrel hunting a bit too much after she got her second 5. Right. And, those waves really weren't opening up. They didn't have the same kind of size that we saw, a few hours later. But, props to Caroline, man. I mean, she pushed her to the limit. And it just seems like, heat 2 and 3 of the final matches, she was gassed out. I mean, at that point, you've already surfed 5, 6 different heats. It's tough for you to be able to go out there for 35 minutes, compete, think, too. I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that you still need to be able to go out there and think as clearly as possible as a competitor, be on the right waves. And for Molly, I mean, she's fresh as a daisy, dude.
Yeah.
Like, she's going out there, hey, I got my 2.5s, but there's really no strain on my body whatsoever. But she had earned that. She earned that right by being the most consistent surfer out of the year. Like, I win the first heat of the title match, I'm world champion. If not, it's got to go to 3. And I can still win based on the back, too. And I think the most surprising thing, if anything, was that Caroline got comboed in the last 2 heats of the final matches. Like, once Molly was able to put up double digits, she just never looked back, and she was constantly always backing up and bettering her backup score, too. I felt like she just found her rhythm. It was almost necessary for her to lose the first heat of the final match to be able to gain that perspective and rhythm. And once she did, I mean, the last 20 minutes of the final heat, it was game over, man. Like, she was just in control of it. Caroline had no answer, and it just seemed like she was desperate out there in the ocean to be able to find a way to break the combination. But a reason why Molly Picklum was able to become world champion for the first time in 2025. And a great reception coming home, too, by the way. I love seeing the Aussie reception right there at the airport. But I don't know, your perspective on that one, Dave, because it seemed to me like Caroline was on point all day long before that.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in between each of these 3 final matches for the women in each of the camps. Like, as you point out, Caroline is such a good surfer. When you combine that with a world-class coach like Luke Egan, it's no wonder she went back to back to back to back on that day, on finals day, including that opening finals match and winning, And I think the momentum all day really favored the surfers who got busy right away.
Yeah.
And, as we said, the linear progression format does favor the higher seeds in a big way. But then the downside, especially if you're the number one seed, is you're just sitting on the train tracks watching your contender coming right at you all day. And they're fresh and they know what their boards are like and they understand the rhythms of the lineup. And I think in that opening match between Molly and Caroline, Molly took a minute to get going and it was a minute too late. The final match 2 out of the 3, right? Molly is 22 years old. She is now the world champion. Spoiler alert. She is a very quick learner. As I said, I'd love to have sat in those camps in between. Molly was working with Mitch Ross out of Newcastle.
Yeah.
She's like, we only met like the week before. They were calling like their training session a blind date the week before the finals,
crazy.
which I'm like, that's bananas. But they really reset after that first loss. And she started that second match with a 7, boom, sucks the energy right away from Caroline and then nails the match with that statement 8-8-3. So then they're at 1 apiece and they have that tiebreak for the world title. At that point, you would have loved to sat in the Luke Caroline camp because I think the camera was actually on them at this point. And you could see Caroline's just going, I'm gassed. What just happened? And, with Molly, I think in that final match, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. She starts again with a 7, notches a 6-5, and then slams the door with an 8-8-3 and an 8-10, 2 excellent scores for her final scoreline of the year. And as we said, at that point, Caroline, she would have had to increase her season-long excellent scoring rides by 200% in this heat alone just to be in the hunt. Absolutely capable of getting 8s, 9s, and 10s, but that wasn't her approach this season. So, Molly Picklum, very well-deserving world champion. There's some exciting stuff happening on the women's side. On the men's side, we didn't get 3 matches. We got 1 match, and that was current frontrunner Brazil's Yago Dora notching up a 15.66 against a rampaging Griffin Colapinto, wins the world title, his very first in 1 match. Mitch, what was your take on this one?
Yeah, one thing that I really want to point out, how deserving Griffin was to be in those final matches right there. I thought strategically, the way he was able to surf the very top of the point, move down, surf the middle part of the wave too. He was always in search for the right wave, given the time that was remaining in the heat and where he was positioned in the heat too. The unfortunate thing for him is that Yago caught on to that. And he was so well prepared. And once again, I think he didn't show enough because he didn't want to during the practice sessions. He was like, hey, I'm just going to surf good enough to make sure that people know I'm world number 1 for a reason, but I'm not showcasing everything that I have so far in the practice sessions. Once he got his initial 7 with a 2-turn combo, it was a closeout, bro.
Yeah.
It was a closeout. He goes up into the lip 1 time, and then the second turn is gnarly. And they only gave it a 7 because we're talking about people that are going to become world champion at the potential end of this match. So I felt as soon as that happened, he knew that he was capable of getting an 8, probably with a single maneuver too. Once that happened, it shifted the energy towards his way. Griffin knew that he was probably forced to at least respond with a 7, maybe even an 8 to get back into the heat. And once Yago was able to get more than 15 points, I was like, there's no way that he's losing this match right here. There's absolutely no way he's losing this match. Energy was in his favor. He was just very comfortable. He was competitive. And I think he realized, why would I let it go to 3 heats when I can win it right here? All the preparation, all the work had been done leading up until that point, and he showcased it, especially with the variety of combos that he had just on the face of the wave too. No need to be able to go to the air, especially with the increase in size, not pursuing barrels, not trying to do or overdo anything, better said. Meanwhile, Griffin had a couple of great responses, but he was backed up against the wall once he was needing a 9. And I just felt the way he was able to manage the 35 heats, talking about Yago, was something that really, to me showcased why he was just outside of the top 5 in previous years. And now he was considered number 1 in the world heading into the Lexus WSL Finals Fiji.
Yeah, it's a great take. I think your insight on the practice session is dead on. I've been so impressed with Iago's poise over the last few events. I've been impressed with his whole career. But we were in Tahiti and he and I were catching up, and I know he wasn't happy with his result in Tahiti, but we were there on those tow days, we were there on the monster opening days, and he was very calm and very paced. And he's like, I'm not here to rush. I'm here to get some waves. I'm here to perform. I love getting barreled. But there there wasn't like a manic energy to him. He was so calm. And I think you're totally right on the training sessions in Fiji. If we look back, he did surf, probably for him, just enough to reassert to everybody, like, I'm the number one here. And he did look great.
Yeah.
But I'd be interesting to watch those training sessions in hindsight and go like, oh my God, he was surfing at like 30%, right? Like he's feeling the reef out. He's feeling his boards out, and he's doing something that's very mature, which is I'm not showing my competitors nor the surfing world, which includes the judges, my entire repertoire here. I'm not going at Mach 5. Like this is a practice lap for me. And I really think he took a note from everyone surfing all day, but you could even argue like Molly's match just before, when he just wasted no time. He's like, I'm starting right away. You pointed out, he takes a closeout. He shows the judges and he shows the surfing world things that we hadn't seen yet, right? Smashes it for a 7.33. Looked awesome. We knew he would be deadly on his forehand, and then he backs it up with an 8.33, and that's the ball game. Like Griffin isn't coming back. I just think Yago is such a deserving world champion. There's no flaws in this young man's game, and I really look forward to seeing how he handles a new challenge with the world champion spotlight in 2026. But yeah, it was awesome. Any closing takes you got from our take machine for the Lexus WSL Finals presented by Corona Cero?
Yeah, it's really important to me to remind everybody. I've been seeing too many things online, too many people that are just talking trash on, hey, the absence of Gabe, the absence of John. Hell no, bruh. Hell no. This guy is deserving. There's nobody that has worked his ass off more than Yago to be able to put himself in this position of success. And if people are trying to take that credit away because two of the greatest surfers of all time, there's no doubt that two of the greatest surfers were absent this year, that's because they wanted to. I mean, obviously one was injured. He was trying to come back for the tail end of the year. He wasn't going to qualify for the finals anyway. But look at the increase in success that Yago's had throughout his years. I mean, he's won outside of Brazil now. He's demonstrated that he's good at pipe and in Tahiti. And of course, at a wave like Fiji, too, that can be so different, so variable, like he's deserving to be world champion. And on the other side of the spectrum with Molly, she hadn't won an event until Brazil, right? And then up until, that point of the year, everybody was like, damn, she's great. She charges certain waves. In Brazil, she proved that she can surf small waves, tiny waves, anything competitive under, shoulder high. And then she goes into Tahiti, too. There's no doubt that she's the favorite after she drops the first 9 of the first 5 seconds in the heat. So I feel like not only the two people deserving of being world champions were able to accomplish it this year, the way they were able to do it really showcased how good they are and how high the talent is at the moment. So personally, big fan of this format. I think it's going to be, a little missed, and just super stoked on the outcome of the event. But yourself, Dave, I know you were there in Fiji for a little bit and you were able to see the practice session. So I feel like you got an even better perspective on things.
Yeah, I will always argue that if you're on the ground in Fiji, you'll get a better perspective, even if that's not 100% true. No, it is. But no, it's interesting. I guess I hadn't been, in the social media dome here in the hot takes around that, so I hadn't been exposed to that. Obviously, I think it's well said. Like John and Gabe are amazing surfers. I think they're amazing surfers that'll likely be back in 2026. I will also say that like Yago Dora is pretty much name number one on any of the CT surfers' lips when they're like, who do you look up to? Yeah. Including John and Gabe. Like he has been, and he's been that way for a while. And you and I are both like core surfers. Like we fancy ourselves as high IQ surfers. I'm not CT level high IQ. I'm not John and Gabe high level IQ. They're seeing something, and they have been seeing something in Yago for a long time. And I just think the world title is the latest proof positive of that. So congratulations. I think well said on Molly too. Such a deserving world champion. I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little more later. But that was it for our take machine for the Lexus WSL Finals Fiji presented by Corona Cero. Congratulations to Yago Dora and Molly Picklum, our new world champions. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some out of the water observations. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I am Dave Prodan here with Mitch Salazar. Mitch, the take machine, that was a lot of fun. Got to kind of go heat by heat on like what do we see in the water and what stood out to us. For this segment, I kind of want to get 3 observations from you. I got 3 from me. It can be a little bit in the water, but more like what happened outside of competition, just observations that you noticed, either from Fiji or just the 2025 Championship Tour season. Mitch, you go first. What's your first observation?
I was really enjoying. Well, first of all, the fact that we had such a long period of downtime before we actually ran the event it gave us a lot of great social media clips and what was happening on the island and whatnot. But I was a big fan of the way everybody was getting along on the island. I think in many sports you probably wouldn't see that as much when you're competing against each other for something that's so prize heavy and valuable as the World Championship. And um, I think it just goes to show how surfers are. And, first of all, the aloha spirit is something that I think really carries well throughout everybody that was there. But more than anything, that in the end, despite you're competing against each other, you still care and worry about their success overall, just in life in general. And especially, I think we see that a lot with Jordy.
Mm.
He was there with his family, with his kids, and was able to take a lot of inspiration from Jack and, having them bond over that. And I just think it was something really special for me as an observant from the outside and as an observer from the outside, excuse me. But most importantly, as somebody that looks up to a lot of these guys. And I've been doing that for a long time, especially with Jordy Smith.
Mm.
I think that guy's a class act. And for him to kind of showcase that and kind of develop the young core that we've seen from Jack Robinson, from Mitchell, of course, Yago too. I think that really proves why surfing's so different than any other sport worldwide. Um, we always hang out with each other despite competing and being on different sides of the spectrum, maybe on the broadcast with the judges, and it's such an intimate part of the world right there. There's really no place to escape. So to me, that was something that I think was really important to showcase, especially through the great use of social media. Shout out to everybody on the social media platforms from WSL. I thought they did an amazing job with that, Dave. But your first kind of observance or observation out there, outside of the water from Fiji.
Yeah, just to back tag yours too, like Tavaru is such a special place. It really is like fantasy island. And and totally like shout out to the WSL social team. I thought they captured everything so well. And I even loved their commentary or the basically just expressing the change in vibe, over the days as it got a little bit closer and you start hearing reports of like, this competitor is kind of eating by themselves and they're not as chatty as they were on day one. And they're, they're spending more time alone. And, you have like the 10 best men's and women's surfers of the season. They are all apex predators. They are all world champions and world title contenders. Like they're there to win, so it does kind of, it's interesting to get that impression of how it evolves over the course of time is like, the day's coming nearer, like I'm here to switch into campaign mode, which I thought was really cool. First observation for me, I know I've hit this a few times, but I want to call it out. The Brazilian men have notched an historic run of world champions in the past 10 years. So since 2015, which 10 years ago, Brazil has produced 5 different men's world champions. We had 3-time world champion Gabriel Medina. He won his first world title in 2014, but then won his second and third in 2018 and 2021. Adriano de Souza claimed the 2015 world title, Italo Ferreira the 2019 world title, Felipe Toledo the 2022 and 23 world titles, and now Yago Dora in 2025. That has never been done before in 50 years of the sport. And I know that the talk of the Brazilian Storm isn't new by any stretch of the imagination, but quantifiably, no other nation has ever come close to this in such a short amount of time. So that's my big observation from the season, from Iago's win. So parabéns, brasileiros. That's incredible.
Dude, your Portuguese is improving.
Hey, that's it. I got 2 words.
Yeah, those are good enough. But it's an excellent observation. I think, when you get recognition from your peers, you get it from the audience and whatnot. Yeah. But when you get it from your peers, as you said, when you become your favorite surfer, like that's saying a lot. And especially for Yago right here in 2025, where everybody's, looking at him, he's on everybody's radar, and you're just like, damn, that guy has truly improved, and he can call himself the best in the world at the moment. I think it's an incredible way not only to demonstrate how global the sport is, but how good the region of South America and especially Brazil has become too, and how important they've become to the globalization of surfing.
Mm,
And to point out another thing, they have world champions from different parts of the country too. It's not like
right.
everybody's from the same exact part.
Right.
You know,
That's
we just had
interesting.
somebody win from the south, which is in Santa Catarina with Yago. We've had somebody from the northeast with Italo win before, and both actually all three of them, Felipe, Gabe, and De Souza, are all from the region of Sao Paulo.
Right.
So
That's a
they've
great
obviously
point.
produced a lot of talent. You've had a lot of them qualify eventually for the World Championship Tour from different parts of the country as well. But I think it's super important to point out because it just shows how big the country is, what an incredible population they have, but what an incredible pool of talent that they've also been producing over the last decade and a half that eventually had a lot of success on the World Championship Tour. My second observation right here outside of the water, it's Jack Robinson not wanting to, or let me rephrase that, not working with Leandro Dora at this event.
Mm,
Kind of caught me off guard personally. They have a very intimate relationship. He's basically Yago's bigger brother, and the fact that it didn't happen that way, I kind of took me by surprise because it was just a few days before the event happened that they actually publicly announced it. And especially with Leandro being there, you know, still wanting to support Yago,
mm.
I just felt like Jack felt that there was maybe going to be too much conflict of interest heading into that event because it's the first time that Yago had ever qualified. So it
Right.
did take me by surprise. Ended up working with Matt Bemrose, who's the Volcom team manager. Didn't work out for him, of course, but I think he's still going to be back in 2026 even stronger. But it did catch me by surprise. I don't know about yourself, but it just seemed like there's been a lot of success with those two working together over the course of the last few years.
For sure. And I mean, Jack obviously had Matt Bemrose, who's been in his corner for a long time. He had some support from, Surfing Australia, like Surfing Australia's Dion Atkinson, former CT surfer himself, was there. He had support, but yeah, the Leandro thing with Jack has been pretty special. Safer for everyone, I think, like in Leandro included. Like if
Mm.
whatever reason, like it becomes Jack versus Yago for the world title, and Leandro coaches Jack to winning over Yago, like that's going to be some awkward Christmases in the future in that house. So I get it. I think that's a good observation. It'll be interesting to see if that continues in 2026 or if there's just a new dynamic on tour. My second observation coming out of Fiji, Matt Biolis rips, and I suppose that's more of an in the water observation, but he was on Tavarui celebrating his back-to-back-to-back CT Shaper world titles, as well as supporting his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 surfers across the WSL finals, not even including Jordy Smith, who ended up running Pizels in competition, but did have some mayhems there too. Matt was fresh off a trip from the Telos, and he and I actually snuck out to Cloudbreak for a sneaky competitorless afternoon evening session, and Matt caught some bombs for the day, and he threw down some huge turns. Like the Blakey brothers were out there, Mikey C from Stab was out there. We're all going, oh my god, look at Matt's turns. And so I just want to call that out. So many of the world's best board builders rip. Britt Merrick rips, Marcio Zuvi, Jason Stevenson, Darren Hanley, they're all rippers, Matt included. Another big year for lost surfboards, and we will see what happens to them in 2026 as the rest of the world-class shapers on the CT Shaper rankings. So more to come here, but it's fun seeing you out there. And Matt, and congratulations on the year, and congratulations for tearing the bag out of Cloudbreak, man.
Yeah, and a big observation right here. I know we mentioned it on the broadcast multiple times, but it is the first time ever that Lost Surfboards Mayhem has ever had a full-time world male champion. It's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty big deal considering that Carissa's always been on this team. She's had a lot of success with the Mayhems, but they never had somebody on the male side that has actually won a world championship, riding from the start of the year to the end of the year his board. So pretty big deal. I mean, considering that he's been around for more than 30 years now, Dave.
Oh my God. I'm glad you brought this up because just play this out for me. Like think back 10 years ago, like Mayhem Lost Surfboards is definitely like a global tier 1 player in high performance board building. But think of his team 10 years ago, which Iago was a part of. Would Iago been your pick for like the first Mayhem team rider on the men's side to win a world title?
Ooh,
Is Iago
good question.
10 years ago?
Yeah, I probably would have gone with Griffin first. Actually, no, I take that back. I would have gone with Kalohe Andino.
Right.
I would
Right.
have gone with Colohandino first. That's a good question.
But I guess that's just, I bring it up too because so much development happens, in the last few years of a surfer's qualification campaign and over the first several years of their CT campaign. Things change, man. Like, and the hot hand when some surfer's 15 is not necessarily what it looks like 10 years later. And, big ups to Lost and big ups to Yago on that point. What was your third observation coming out of the end of the season event there, Mitch?
I just want to point out, how incredible our broadcast production is. And the people that work behind the scenes to be able to do that. I think for a lot of people, they just don't understand how difficult it is and how many people it takes to be able to run a broadcast like that, especially at a location that doesn't have, much going on, So the fact that we ran the 2 practice sessions for a full day basically was really cool. The first day of the waiting period, we always have dawn patrol, but the fact that they kept the broadcast going for nearly 2 hours before they actually pulled the trigger with the call on the day that we ran. That's hard. It's difficult. It takes a lot of people to be able to run, a lot of storylines still to fill out. And of course, once you run, people might already be fatigued from the 2 hours where you're trying to get, new ideas and fresher ideas. If the event's on or not, you're waiting for the swell. So I just really want to say thank you and congratulations to the entire broadcast crew from the World Surf League for such an incredible year, for such an awesome way to finish off the event. And especially, to Ronnie and Vaughn, who are grinding out there, on the boat in the Red Bull Athlete Zone too. I know it can get, a little difficult with how seasick some people can get, but I think they did a spectacular job. And props to yourself too. Congratulations on such an amazing year. The development, the changes that you had also with the Lexus WSL Finals, Fiji, Dave. Implementing the higher seed got priority. Of course, the winner of the first match being world number 1, automatically becoming world champion. There was a lot of great things that to me came out of this event. So congratulations to you and your team as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. I think that's a good call out, and congratulations to you. I think across the board, like, people put in the work because they love watching the world's best surfers, like, push the boundary, and that's what we got. And I think the broadcast call out's so appropriate out there. Jed Pearson, he heads up the entire content apparatus, and producers Milby Shannon, Ted Chivanes, the whole team like deserves a ton of works, a ton of credit. So great call out. And we'll be seeing more of them next year. And on the practice sessions too, I don't think this is breaking news, but if it is, we'll break it on the podcast. We do have permits to run training sessions the day before each window for the world's best surfers, I think at every spot except for Pipeline next year. So hopefully we'll be getting quite a lot of day -1 analysis, which is awesome for fantasy. It's awesome just to watch the world's best in slightly different circumstances at some of the world's best waves. It's great for gambling if that's your bag. So yeah, should be exciting. But my third observation, we talked about the concentrated dominance of the Brazilian men over the last decade. And I think it's also worth highlighting that this century, so 25 years, it's 1.5 times the Brazilian window. But the Australian women have now also put up 5 different world champions, right? 7-time world champion Lane Beachley, she collected 4 out of her 7 world titles at the start of the century. 2005 world champion and goofy foot icon Chelsea Hedges, 8-time world champion Stephanie Gilmore, who notched her 8 crowns between the years 2007 and 2022. It's an incredible feat. 2-time world champion Tyler Wright, and now 22 years young Molly Picklum. So that's a very impressive quintet from the lucky country. And tangentially, I never pronounced that word right, so we'll just keep that in there. We had 15 years of women's surfing dominated effectively by 3 people, right? You had Steph, 5-time world champion Carissa Moore, and Tyler. And in the past 3 years, so 23, 24, and 25, we've got 3 new world champions. You got Caroline Marks, she is currently 23 years young. Katie Simmers, she's currently 19 years young. And we mentioned Molly's 22. That's an average age of 21.3 years young for the 3 most recent women's world champions. So my third observation coming out of the Lexus WSL Finals presented by Corona Cero is that women's surfing has formally exited the era of concentrated dominance and is now in an era of like aggressive contention, right? So these 3 champions will be trading blows for so many years to come. And then you watch the new talent that's emerging, that's coming through the ranks, that's already there or knocking on the door. I think the women's tour is just like a powder keg of performance that's about to go off. So that's my third observation coming out of Fiji.
It's an incredible point. The median age on the women's side for this event, about 20 and a half years old, 21 years of age. I mean, dude, Sakura's 20. She's still going to have an incredible career. I think Gabby Bryan still has a lot more left in the tank. Obviously, she won 3 events during the regular season this year. You mentioned Molly being 22. Caroline's only 23. She qualified for the tour when she was 15,
right.
made her debut when she was 16.
She feels like she seems like a veteran, but it's just by virtue of her incredible achievements. She's still so young.
Because she is.
Yeah.
Because she's already been on tour for nearly 8 years. And you just look at the path that Katie's had, denying the spot on tour after already qualifying and saying, you know what, I want to be a kid again. She requalified. In her second year, she wins the world title. It's her third finals appearance right here in 2025. I just think the youth nowadays, especially on the women's side, is so stacked. And this year included on the Challenger Series, we have many teams that are currently within the top 10.
Right.
And a lot of them could potentially be competing for the World Championship next year, too. So a lot of great and positive things coming out of the women's side so far in 2025.
That's a great point. Well, thanks for the out of the water observations there, Mitch. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we will answer some listener questions. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm your part-time co-host, Mitchell Salazar. That is a great Dave Prodan. If we don't get to your question today, remember to always write in at the lineup pod. We will be answering your question in our DMs as we always do. Dave, let's get started. Our first one is actually from a coworker of ours, a colleague at Chris Cote, with a great question, by the way, in men's title match number 1. Would Griff have got the score if he comes out of that barrel?
Well, thank you, Chris, and thanks to you and Todd for my Monday Mass coffee mug. It's a little late in the day for a cup of coffee for me, or at least I'm telling myself that, but it has been a frequent guest on these podcasts lately. I will default to my go-to here. I am not a judge, but I don't think he gets the score. I think it's very close, and I think it's even closer because there's so much drama happening on that day. There weren't a ton of tubes. It was a well-surfed wave. It was a great barrel, and it happened right at the end of the heat, right? And so I think it could even go as far as being a split decision, but I don't think he gets it. I do think that Yago ultimately surfed better through that heat overall, but he made it exciting. I don't know, Mitch, what do you think?
It's one of those things where it's always what if, and you just got to go back and watch it multiple times. The one thing I will say, if there's one thing where I'm leaning more towards yes, it's because of the way he enters the barrel, straight coming out of the turn.
Great point. That's
so radical. It's really difficult to do, readjusting your line that way. But as always, we're never going to get the answer without the actual outcome of it. So needed a low 9, a low to mid 9, actually, which is really difficult. You're talking about the best wave of the event of the day, competing for a world championship against the world number 1 at that moment. I'd probably be leaning towards no, but as you said, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was an actual split decision. And once again, I think the big difference from Griff in that event, that particular day from everybody else, was the amount of speed that he was carrying throughout the majority of his turns. And especially that turn where he came out of it going straight into the barrel was a big point of difference. But
here's a hypothetical. Go on. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, here's a hypothetical for you to go off of Chris's question. Let's say Griffin does come out of the barrel. Let's say he gets the score. Let's see he turns match 1, wins it after Yago performed the way he did. So instead of 1 match for the men, we get all 3. Who is your pick at that point to win the world title?
Dude, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. I still would have gone with Yago, but damn, man, that's actually a really good question, because I feel like there's times where Griff gets that extra motivation just by getting those small victories. And not to say that it's a small victory, you're being world number 1, right, and a winner takes all match right there. But I still would have picked Yago, because I think with the capabilities that he has of adjustment on the fly, he would have been able to adjust to his opponent within those next 35 minutes. And then, of course, heat number 3 in that final match, too. But now I got to ask you the same one. Who would you have had if it went to all 3?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I go back to like my point on Iago's composure that I got to see and experience firsthand over the last few events. So strong, so calm. I think if the heat turns after he surfed the way he surfed, he goes to the channel, he readjusts, and he takes Griffin out over the next two heats. I also, even though Yago was posting good and excellent scores, I still think he had another 20-30% in the tank.
He did.
Like, I mean, the main argument for me wanting to have this happen is to get to see both of them surf 200% more, right, than just the one heat. Like, I would have loved to have seen that, but yeah, I think Yago still takes it. I think the universe said he's the world champion this year in more ways than one.
There was one wave that Yago had actually. It's one carve specifically that he has after he already has his two scores that was so messed up. I mean, I'm talking about like it could have been the turn of the year if he actually pulls it. He pulls that turn and completes the rest of the wave. He's probably getting the best score out of the day, in my opinion. And I think at that point, if he improves, the 7 that he has as a backup, it should be game over right there. But, deserving of obviously the world championship, I think it would have been really fun to see at least, the 4 or 5 minutes of watching the replay over and over again and analyzing that, and just seeing if Griff would have gotten the score or come close to it towards the end. So great question, Chris. Really appreciate it. Our second question from a great surfer that I met earlier this year in El Salvador, at Idan Elar. Hey, Dave and Mitch, Shaka Bra. How do you think Mayhem will do? Do you think they'll go 4 times in a row with the Vizsla CT Shaper of the year?
Thanks for the question, Idan. Shaka back. I mean, this is the talk of the board building community, right? I think when we started considering doing a CT Shapers ranking, not too dissimilar to like the F1 Constructors Cup, it was basically based off of Marcio Zuvi and Sharp Eye's like amazing rise to dominance in the early 2000s. We weren't measuring it then, but we're like, this is an amazing story. And everyone was talking about it. They were talking about the board models that they had and the team acquisitions they made and the performances of that team. And we just thought this would be really cool. And I think for those of us that follow this pretty closely, like we'd identified, like obviously the teams are different sized. You and I talk about that all the time, but even the different sized teams, there are going to be teams that are in the mix, and I think we all thought, yeah, Lost is going to be one of, 3 or 4 programs based on the size and the depth of talent that will be in the mix. What they've put on is like the 1996 Chicago Bulls performance over the last 3 years. Like, I don't think anyone thought they would be this dominant. I don't even think they thought this would be this dominant. And it's been really incredible. We have been talking to a lot of the Shapers. We've got our 50th anniversary of the World Tour coming up next year. We love the CT Shaper rankings, and we are tinkering with potential changes to the formula next year. For the record, all the tinkering has been remodeled over the last 3 years. Same result every year. Mayhem takes it away pretty much any way you slice it. I don't think that will have a huge impact on their team next year. I do think more teams will be in the mix. I do think, if someone named Carissa Moore comes back for Mayhem, this could look pretty gnarly. I do think some of these other programs like DHD and JS are on the upswing. I think programs like Sharp Eye and Channel Islands could make some major inroads in the off season too. So I think next year will be more competitive than ever, but I think it's more than possible that Lost goes back to back to back to back and four-peats. It would be an incredible achievement. But yeah, I mean, I think it's theirs to lose at this point based on the last 3 years. Mitch, what do you think?
Yeah, well, here's the thing that we need to go off of numbers-wise. At the finals, you pointed out, they had 5 surfers right there. But if you consider that they had the 2 men's finalists, 1 and 2 in the world right there, that proves something. They're really consistent. And on the women's side, they had the runner-up to the world championship, and they also had number 3 in the world with Gabby Bryan, too. So that's really difficult. The one thing that I always point out about the Lost team is that their women's side is just as strong as anybody else. And I think that's really where they're making the majority of their money. You mentioned Carissa winning 5 world titles with Matt's boards under her feet. Caroline's obviously been a big member of her team so far. The pickup of Debbie Lou Sakura Johnson was huge for them in 2025. And once again, Gabby Bryan, 3 regular season CT wins was huge. But on the men's side, you still have a lot of killers. Cole Houshman was able to win an event second year on tour once again. And I do think that when you see the people that are close to qualifying for tour on both the men's and women's Challenger Series rankings, we need to see more diversity of qualifiers from board builders on the women's side. I think Sharp Eye has a lot of potential right there. DHD has potential with Kika Vaselko. But of course, in the end, Channel Islands is still a big catalyst, and they want to acquire more surfers both on the Challenger Series and on the World Championship Tour. The absence of Brisa Hennessy, to me, this year was something huge for them. Same thing with Fahine, not making the second out of the year, but still requalifying for 2026. She should be huge for them. And I think the change in format should also benefit a lot of the smaller board builders or the people with the smaller team. If they're able to make it through those initial rounds and then eventually make it into the quarters, I think it's going to be big for a lot of those labels.
It's a great point. And I mean, we should say too, the Vissla CT Shaper rankings has been a combined men's and women's rankings. We do measure the men's and women's separately. This year, Mayhem won both, right? You're right. Historically, his women's team is so dominant, but his men's team this year delivered a number one spot as well, and that's why he had such an incredible year. I want to ask you this, though. You mentioned Channel Islands and, potentially in the acquisition era over the offseason. I think it's like a month or two ago, the GOAT, 11-time world champion Kelly Slater went down to Brazil, did some wave pool thing with Gabriel Medina. Gabriel had a Merrick under his arm, a stickered up Merrick. I didn't see any waves necessarily written on it. I can look a little bit closer, but he definitely had one. And your thoughts on that?
I think that would be a game changer, obviously, because we are talking about maybe one of the top 3 greatest surfers of all time with, a CI board. We all know what Kelly was able to do with those boards for pretty much 3 decades. And I think in the end, if you get that guy, it kind of, I don't want to say it nullifies everybody else, but it intimidates everybody for a specific reason. And especially with Brit opening up, the distribution within Brazil, a lot of those boards being shaped within Brazil right now too. He really only needs to send the file. There's much more accessibility for Gabe in that sense too. So if it happens, I think it's a big game changer. I still don't think that they automatically catapult to number one, but I think they're much more in the conversation of at least fighting for the top 2 spots from the very beginning of the year to the tail end of it too. So, would be fun.
There is footage. I'm watching it right now, actually. That's interesting. It's interesting. Keep an eye on it. I mean, it's hard, right? It's Gabriel Medina. He looks excellent.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, and we should say too, like he has been so loyal to Johnny Cabianca, Johnny Brazilian, who shapes out of the Basque Country, but those boards have been incredible for him too. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting for both parties. Maybe nothing happens, maybe something does, but our listeners out there, like keep the intel coming. We love trades and acquisitions in the board builder space over the off season. And, I think everyone, competitor, board builder, brand, venue, everyone's coming with their A+ game for the big 50th anniversary in 2026.
Yeah, and also I think Joao Chianca is a big part of their team.
Sure.
And they want to get him going. Still had a good end to the year. I felt like he with Griffin probably could have gone either way in Tahiti. Sure. So, watch out for him. He seems like he's extra motivated and 100% healthy right now. So I think he's going to have a great 2026 as well. Our final question at Cole Campbell: without the mid-season cut, how do you think the surfers from 10 to 22, let's say the mid to low tier surfers on the World Championship Tour, will fare given that we won't have a mid-season cut in 2026?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good theoretical too, right? I think we've talked about a lot on this podcast. They've obviously talked about a lot in the surfing world, but just for our listeners' benefit. So next year, the 2026 Championship Tour season, the 50th anniversary year of a world tour, it will start in April at Bells Beach, CT1. It will then go to Margaret River, then Snapper Rocks, Punta Roca in El Salvador, Saquarema in Brazil, Jeffreys Bay in South Africa, Teahupo'o in Tahiti, back to Cloudbreak for a regular season event in Fiji, and then finish the regular season with lower trestles at CT9. At that point, the top 2/3 of the field will advance to what we're calling the postseason. So CT10 will be at Surf Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and then CT11 will be at Peniche in Portugal. At that point, the entire field, even that bottom third, will return for the season-ending Pipe Masters in December. That event will be worth 1.5 times the regular season points. The top 8 surfers after CT11 will be seeded directly into the round of 16. So we're going to have an interesting concentration of stories, right? We'll have those top tier surfers all looking to win their world title at Pipe if they haven't already clinched, which is probably a far-fetched possibility given the weight of the Pipe Masters. And then you're going to have those returning surfers, the surfers that maybe fell just outside the top 2/3 that didn't get to surf at Surf Abu Dhabi. They didn't get to surf at Peniche, but they're returning to the Pipe Masters with their fangs out, because all the surfers at the end of the year will be year-end ranked based on their best 9 results. So if you're a surfer that didn't make it to the postseason, you fell off at lower trestles, you're going to have 9 events to count out of 10 total, right? If you're a surfer who does make it, top 2/3, you're still going to count 9 results. You're just going to have 12 events because you'll get those extra 2 at Surf Abu Dhabi and Peniche. So it's not a guarantee that you've qualified by the time you get to the Pipe Masters. So I think this change in particular, it just means that once you get through lower trestles, if you get through lower trestles, there's no resting on your laurels, especially if you're around the cutoff, because your contenders, they're coming back at Pipe, and that is the proving ground. So it's a great question. That might have been a long-winded kind of explanation, but Mitch, what do you think about that? And what do you just think about the impact that the change has on that sort of bottom tier, lower third at lower trestles?
I think the best phrase to use to describe it is the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And I think the biggest change right here, you explained it perfectly, given that it is worth 1.5, the amount of points right there at the Pipe Masters to finish off the year. Everybody's going to be able to surf right there. That's huge. But the fact that there's no more non-elimination rounds is the biggest thing. You have to go up against some of the top dogs right at the beginning of the event, and it's like, hey, this is going to happen anyways. So the fact that if I beat them already, that's pretty much, a decent result right there. So my chances of already making it into the top 15 in the first half of the year and maybe surfing some of the better events with higher quality waves towards the very tail end, I'm feeling much more sure about myself. But that also does mean for those first year surfers or maybe returning surfers that have been off tour a couple of years, grinding on both the QS and the Challenger, now I have to face the big dogs immediately. Sometimes, and most times, it is intimidating. And especially for people like John who might come back, for Gabe who's working through a comeback right now, he's probably going to start from the very bottom and have to face a lot of those guys who, work their way up to being a mid to top tier surfer right at the beginning. So 10 to 22, it was a very specific one from Cole, but I feel like a lot of those surfers, especially Joel, Marco, who's Rookie of the Year this year, Alan as well, they've already gone through the ups and downs of having to go through the cut, first of all, survive that, surf in a different kind of format throughout the first and half of the year. And now for those people that are coming into this format for the first time, it might be beneficial just to go for it right at the beginning. It's like, go for broke. If I lose, good. And if I win, even better. I'm getting experience out of both things. So that's my perspective on it. But once again, the higher the risk, the higher the reward as well.
It's a great note. Well, thanks to everyone that wrote in at the lineup pod with comments and questions. If we did not get to your comment or question, hit us up. We love talking in the DMs. Mitch, awesome breaking down the Lexus WSL Finals Fiji presented by Corona Cero. Our 2 new world champs in Australia's Molly Picklum and Brazil's Yago Dora, very well deserving the entire 2025 Championship Tour season. While the CT's finished for the year, the Challenger Series, the tier where the hungriest surfers on the planet are looking to break in for the big 50th anniversary 2026 CT, it's still going. We have our next event, the EDP Aracera Pro in Portugal, that starts on September 29th. Everyone check that out on worldsurfleague.com and the WSL app. Mitch, this may be our last formal podcast of the season. I'm sure we're going to drag you back for some other stuff, but you and I will keep talking. Enjoy your time in Mexico, man. I hope you get some good waves and look forward to catching up down the track.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Dave. And congratulations once again on an epic year. And best of luck and enjoy the rest of the year. And hopefully we get to see some new qualifiers, some new faces for the World Championship Tour through the Challenger Series this year.